Yay, another person.
Hi, it's me.
Hello, hello.
Oh, I'm gonna be, I can't get on a computer, so I'll be auditing.
Oh, that's all right. I'm
Yes.
still uh I'm still waiting on others to come in, so if I don't
Okay,
respond in the next minute, don't be offended.
okay. And I have to split a little early too, so, but,
Oh, it's all right.
but that was fun. Yes, that last class was really fun. That was really fun.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think this one will be. Geez, I thought last class was my worst class. That's good to hear.
No, it was fun. It opened up. I was really, I know how to do a lot of this stuff in Unreal, but Unreal's a different program completely.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah.
but it's nice to refresh on Unity, but also to see how this plays together. It really was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm glad. Good. And I'm assuming that you are seeing uh I don't know. I think you're seeing this screen, where I'm
Yes, you
highlighting
are.
things. Okay, good. And are you seeing the little red lines here with the window?
Yep.
All right, good. So I'm on the right thing. All right, cool. Just got to make sure I get a nice clean recording for everybody. Uh, Zoom, Zoom isn't the best. I'm just gonna put this link up, and we'll wait another minute or so for people to join in, and then we'll be good to go. I thought I already put this link up. There we go. And that's that. That's all I wanted to do. Perfect. All right. Wow, session 4. Rory, are you ready for the semester to begin?
I can't wait. Yours is probably gonna be my favorite class, like usual.
Oh, people like the 3D class way better than the 2D class. So, and it's very demo heavy, very technical, but we just kind of have fun while we make stuff and learn Maya. So, it ends up being sort of a nice way to. If you come in the morning, it's a nice way to wake up in the morning, actually, because you kind of get in the flow, you know.
I'm in your 11:30
Oh,
or 11 class. I don't know when it starts.
oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect way to start your day.
You're gonna come to class with Starbucks every day like usual?
Oh yeah, thanks to you. I still, geez, I think I still
You
see the
still have the gift card?
problem is I have so many gift cards. I have so many
Really?
I'm working through. Uh, and yeah,
Well,
that's
maybe I should have gotten something a bit more unique. It's too
Oh no,
bad.
are you kidding me? I'm gonna use it. That was a
Okay.
very sweet gift. I'm
I'm
not
glad
even
you
sure
like
if
it.
we're allowed to. I mean, I don't think there are any rules on like gifts to
I feel like
professors,
if
but
I could do
are
it in
there?
high school, then why can't I do it in
Yeah,
college?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I thought that was very nice. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'll definitely be using it this semester. I got it on my desk, ready to go.
Awesome.
All right. So I'll just have like a short little message. I don't know why this always. Okay. Oh, you have to complete all these lessons, otherwise you don't see. Oh wow. Okay, that's ridiculous. I guess I have to uncheck all these if people haven't gone through them yet. That's all right though, cause this is live. I say we just get started. Some people may have gone to the wrong link, or maybe they're just gonna join us asynchronously, which is totally fine. Bev, thanks for the warning on the early exit and all that. Glad to have you. Regardless, likewise, Rory. Let's start by and some of this is actually going to be new to you, Rory. So you'll well, and I think it'll be because you're more of an Unreal Engine creator, right, Bev? And then so basically, it should all be new to you as well. Is all I'm saying. As far as the agenda goes, I wanted to review some stuff from last time because we didn't really go over the slides. I made the slides after the class due to how I was structuring it at that time. But I think it'll be good to just kind of do a run through of those slides. It's very short, and then a little bit on Sfumato in relation to movement and animation. Also, some best practices that are involved. Most of that will be covered in a way that is shown. So I probably, in regards to the animation part at least, Rory, some of it might be a little bit, something that you already are aware of and you know about because you learned it in our class. Um, However, there's a good portion of this that you don't know about, and that's going to be extremely useful and will broaden your Unity skills immensely, actually. Because we don't really go over this type of thing in 2D. I go over it a little bit in 3D, but probably not to this extent when it comes to settings that are appropriate for uh, actually for VR, AR, or for the Looking Glass display, but mainly for the Looking Glass display in this regard. We'll go over that some more later. New project. So we have, when I say new project, I mean I want you to create a project. We're going to start. I'm not going to give you the rubric yet. I'll give you the rubric probably early next week, so Monday or something like that, maybe even tomorrow. That way you can get a little bit of a head start. I'll even make a small video that shows what I'm looking for just to make it a little easier. Ultimately, though, if you do something wrong, it's not going to count against you or anything. This is all what you make out of it, right? Then we're going to do a little bit more on 3 dimensions, so a little bit of 3D stuff. Probably won't be obviously making 3D, but we'll be animating it to the extent of like moving a sphere over to this side and what are best practices when it comes to some aliasing that may be infringing upon the edges of your 3D objects. And a lot of that has to do with how the physics engine is rendering, and thus movement takes a toll on some draw calls that go to the CPU, and therefore optimizing to prevent this aliasing or little glitters around the edges of your 3D objects. And we'll learn about finite state machines a little bit. All of that will be in practice, right? So, but I do want to go over some slides for those project settings after the review. And here we go. Definitely take notes if you can. So this former lesson from session 3 was all about space. And it was very broad, sort of idea that has to do more so with the arts and also with making things a little bit maybe more realistic in your work to the extent of perception. So not necessarily realistic in like, oh, this skin looks like skin, or the light is hitting this perfectly, etc. But more so playing with space as an expression and some best practices that come along with that in tandem or in relation to the Looking Glass display. So here we have a Kara Walker piece. The way Kara uses space is obviously most of the time. She has some rare pieces that have a touch of color in them, but they're mainly sketches or really just badass paintings, which I actually love more than her sort of cutouts or uh, these silhouettes, right? What's interesting about her work is that she's actually literally using black and white, right? And it's a very in your face sort of idea. Like, okay, here's a profile of a white male. Here's a profile of a black female. Um, what you know? What is what is the relationship between those two when they're together, but also separate? That's something that she plays with a lot, and it obviously talks about racism, but not only that, it talks about these sort of uh, weird power struggle between the literal colors themselves, and makes a sort of touches on how not only is there an actual power struggle between white and black because they are complementary, right? All color versus the absence of color being black, all colors in the spectrum being white. Um, that strange idea, right, in relation to uh, the them together and society, the inequalities within, but also the sort of not only political and societal struggles, but the actual physical struggles between the two colors in combination. And it also relates to negative space and positive space. So obviously, in these profiles here, silhouettes rather, huge, huge relationship between, okay, here's the black being actually additive in this case, the white being a sort of on the left side here, the white being a sort of negative space, the black being a positive space, and vice versa for the silhouette on the right. It does something different, right? One is actually looks kind of like a hole. The other could also look like a hole, but maybe so you don't really know, right? And it's just a very simple dynamic she uses to kind of juxtapose not only the two colors but the two sort of disparate uh, parties, subjects, and they should not be disparate, right? That's the other thing. Without white, there is no shape, right? Without black, there is no shape here. So that's the beauty of that. And that's just one way to look at her work. I mean, there's many, many, many ways to look at it. But I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a highlight to Kara's work because she's amazing. Never met her. She might be a good person. I'm not really sure, but her work certainly certainly makes her out to be a great person. Right. And I'll put this on full screen.
It's a
Session.
bit laggy.
Oh, is it lagging? Oh.
Yeah, just a bit.
Oh, is it? How's the clarity?
It's still good. The clarity's fine.
Nice. All right, perfect. Thank you for the warning. what I can do, kind of do this real quick. That this should help us out. And there we go. Cool.
Yeah, it's a bit less laggy now.
There you go. Could even kind of keep it. I mean, it might be a little laggy now too, but that's all right. So session 3, creating more depth, and this is review, right? So that's why it's session 3 still. You don't have to worry about this stuff. We did this live, so we'll just brush past that. But yeah, space as expression in the looking glass. Plot my notes here. I'll keep it like this. Why not? So it's a little bit different, right? I mean, Kristen Farr, as far as I just made a pun. As far as going into space and the interpretation of it throughout the ages, I think she does a fantastic job. It's a really good New York Times article. Feel free to peruse that. She also has a great video, which I've posted up on these slides as well. I'd like you to kind of review those when you can. All about, just form and space throughout the ages in the arts. From performance to painting to drawing, whatever it is, just goes into fantastic and great detail. And this is just a fantastic video that she's obviously kind of directed. Richard Serra being one of my favorites. You can see his work at the Art Foundation.
Space is always part of an artwork, sometimes in multiple ways. No art form demonstrates this more than site-specific work. Site-specific art is designed exclusively for one particular space. For this type of art, it's impossible to isolate the work from its surrounding environment.
So this is all, it's going to go through all of this, right? Obviously, she has many, many videos. It's not just her, it's KQED Arts. But Kristen Farr was a part of this one, and in conjunction with the article she wrote. And she just does a great job explaining how space can be played with in conjunction with form and the like. So please watch that when you can. It's only like 5 minutes long. And we'll just continue on from there. But yeah, what does, in this case, if we were to kind of open up this article, I think we would be able to make a case for what it's actually doing. But without even looking at the article, I think we can also make a case for what it's doing. What is the negative space doing with the positive space? So in this case, it seems like, all right, it's clustering of masses. People are congregating to this left side in a very literal sense, right? And there's more space around the people going toward the right. Negative space, I should say. You open up the article, and we have the high price of failing America's costliest patients. So now we have, well, if you can actually get this thing out of here, that'd be nice. But yeah, just the title itself should help you realize, okay, it's a congregation of many people just struggling with costs. In this case, some medical costs of sorts. But yeah, and you can interpret it however you want, right? But when in context, it just makes even more sense. So context can actually give space more definition, not only form or texture, right, or something of the like, but putting in context to something that's written or that is something that is around it. So how would you reinterpret that, right? How would this become something else in your mind? Think about the hardware that you're using. Think about the content you are creating, and most importantly, think about what you are creating your content for, or who you are creating your content for. And these are just again basics of some space things about space that I wanted to highlight. So if we think about two ideas coming together, disparate ideas, even two different concepts or beliefs, we can start forming proper relationships within our work. So when it comes to expressing that site-specific or disparity within space, it may need to be site-specific. So in this case, we have Anish Kapoor here at the Guggenheim Museum. It's called Memory. I don't know if anybody has seen this live in the chat. It's pretty awesome. Definitely recommend it. It's wild. So essentially, it kind of deals with this positive and negative space vibe that I've been kind of harping on this whole review process here, because it is literally black on the inside, and you can explore it. It is the absence, right? Whereas the surrounding encapsulating shape is definitely not absence. It's extremely present and in your face. And the reason why this is site specific is because Anish Kapoor wanted to put it in a very tight space. So it landed here. I don't know how Anish Kapoor puts anything in spaces. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's unbelievable. But yeah, it's literally a giant structure in a tiny space with pure darkness inside, pure absence. So, how might we translate that into a profound idea of our own, or how does that, you know, juxtaposition make it into your own work? I guess is what I'm really saying. For me, my hollow comic, it takes this idea of a very metaphysical at a very metaphysical and social level. The entire theme is based around red and blue. Becoming Violet, while the main character's name is Violet. It attempts to find a sort of meaning between these two, while also finding a sort of feeling of home. Red and blue as a theme allowed me to point to many things. The hardware itself, right? Red and blue referring to certain things like kind of like those 3D glasses, right? That you would put on to read an actual paper holographic comic, right? Sort of stereoscopic. But it also points to politics, right? So you have allowed me to talk about the sort of polarization of society, etc., the lack of communication between two parties or systems, and how Violet was sort of lost in it all, confused, being like a child, right? Within the chatter and the finger pointing and all that. This piece by Anish Kapoor, it doesn't quite relate directly to what we are doing, right? But I think it's important that we talk about how certain things like this can make its way into a piece that's for the Looking Glass display. So big within small, right? Dark within light. All of this can affect what we create, and all of it can be done with a Looking Glass display, if done properly. Oh, that's the word I was looking for. The blue and red, anaglyph glasses. Anaglyph. That's right. Two different colors, two separate eyes, allowing for a 2D image to become 3D, right? Via perception. Yeah. So that relationship is what I was going for. So Einstein, he's the sort of introduction or at least one of them, to the sort of fourth dimension. So it's with space. There's always an element of time. We will talk more about time today, actually, but it doesn't make sense to completely exclude it from these particular slides. So general theory of relativity suggests space-time expands and contracts depending on momentum, mass of nearby matter, etc. We move through our lives without thinking about it, but these movements we are making in time are intrinsically linked. Richard Serra, this is his work here, would give you a sense of that strange link by giving you a sort of tactile feeling of space. He really likes to allow space to wrap around you. And I'm not talking about the metal that he uses as a tool to do that. I'm talking about the empty space that he's making you walk through. So it's very tactile. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced this with his work, where you can kind of feel this a tad bit of sort of vertigo or fluctuation within your sort of sensory awareness of where you're standing, right? Vertigo. So we can actually achieve that, and I have at least done it to myself. I don't know if others are experiencing it with my work, but you can achieve a similar feeling with creations for the Looking Glass, which is actually kind of interesting. A lot of that has to do with time stepping, which we'll get into in a bit, but also different aspects of sound, animation, and the actual depth that you're creating. Those combined in relation to each other can allow you to kind of manipulate the space to kind of bolster a certain type of perceived vertigo or awareness or whatever you wish for your participant. Um, so yeah, let's keep on going here. This being our last slide for space. Yeah, I mean I love Yayoi. Oh, I can never Yayoi Kusama. I always say Kusama, but I do like to try. Anybody know the proper pronunciation? If you don't, that's all right. Um,
Yayoi.
it is Yayoi. Oh yeah, don't you have a
Yep.
little bit of You got a little bit of language there. Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
taking Japanese this semester.
that's right. Okay, forgot about that. This piece I saw in L.A. recently, actually. And it's kind of fun. It's obviously it's not very big. You just kind of poke your head in it and look around, but it's really big when you get inside, right? So in this case, it's sort of the opposite of the Anish Kapoor piece, where uh, it's huge on the outside and it's in this tiny space. Where this is like this is in a huge space, but is actually very tiny, maybe like 7 feet tall at the most, 6.5 feet tall, and you just kind of poke your head in these little holes, and it's just like a cylinder, and it very much feels like you're in a sort of, I don't know, ethereal place, somewhere infinite. But these are the relationships I want you to experiment with, because when it comes to Kusama's work in particular, she's really sort of, I mean, she's making infinity, and it's almost like a perceived hologram to some extent, right? Like you're kind of there's a repetition of space, there's a coalescing of space, making things look a little different here and there. Not exactly parallax, which is something that our device uses, but it's putting you in a different space that isn't quite noticeable in your space until you really get up close to it. And we do use refraction and the like with these displays, so it's something something to kind of think about, right? How does it relate? How could you maybe play with that refraction, right? The reflections therein. Uh, and it makes you feel minuscule. A lot of her work, off kilter, unbalanced, sort of like Richard Serra's, but a lot more colorful, and definitely not one material. But yeah, it plays on where we belong in all of this, obviously. But the subject, although feeling small, does still play a pretty major role in her work. But I do think that Richard Serra's work, like you need a subject for that, right? Obviously, they are beautiful structures that could subsist on their own and weather the elements, but in order for that to be complete, you need a subject. Pretty much all art needs a subject to walk through it or interact with it in some sense. But yeah, think about your subject. And that's it for space. I wanted to just briefly touch base on reviewing that. The next lesson I have in mind has to do with time and movement, and it does get a little bit technical as we sort of move through it. So I just want to go over proper physics settings because obviously we're in a physics engine. Movement and physics are sort of intertwined within that, right? By default. So very specific development settings. Definitely take notes, or at least just kind of save this slideshow for later. Uh, all of it is kind of in the slides, right? A lot of this is going to be new to you, Rory. It's very specific to the display, but keep in mind I have also used some of these settings for VR, so it's not just this display that these can be used for. Um, VR has a very similar sort of optimization pipeline, at least in my opinion, with the Looking Glass display. I think there are obviously a lot of different settings that need to be adjusted, but for the most part, they're very similar by from afar. It's not very different. So if we go into the slides here, I'll just kind of dig into what I'm talking about. I just basically used the same image here because I love it. Continued. So we are going to be talking about depth, right? But depth in the sense of time as well. So let's dig into it a little bit. Now, this slide is relevant once again. So if you're not taking notes, that's fine. If you have a computer you can use, definitely open up your project. If you don't, also fine. But taking notes is most definitely advised because there are some goodies here. But these slides will be available, so it's not a priority for you to take notes. So open up your projects. I'll do the same thing before I get started here. And I'm just going to open up this. Let's see here. Film festival. That was okay. I see. I want to open up this one. Open up the simpler one. Feel free to use whatever you wish in this regard. And if you want some additional tips on 3D modeling, reach out to me. I will provide some tutorials I've made for students in the past that they tell me are helpful, but I can always improve. So here's my random creation here. Make sure that I have toggled on. Very good. Right. We were definitely just playing around. Wow, look at this mess I made. Well, it's messy to me. Definitely some more to be done here, I think. Anyhow, I don't want to get distracted. So, my project's open. Yours should be open, or open it up later and look at the slides later, whatever you're comfortable with or can do in the moment. Project settings. Not always easy to remember these things. So I actually take pictures of a lot of my project settings. I'm in the wilds of Indiana. Oh wow! How you liking it, Chad? I see all that rustic wood just brushing up against your lovely hair from above on the ceiling. Uh, oh wow, he's keeping quiet. He doesn't want to talk to me.
It's loud here. I'm in a coffee shop.
I'm just kidding. It's great. Um, man, I want to see. I want rafters like that in my house. Like that's just so nice. I don't know if you'd call them rafters, but
You like industrial style?
yeah, I like the industrial look. It's nice. It's very open. It seems dirty, but it is very clean.
I've always wanted like an industrial loft with like steel rafters on
Yeah.
top and like the big windows.
Yeah.
It's so
my-
nice.
You should. My friend Austin, he lives in an old warehouse, and they're probably gonna kick him out soon. But just it's really sad. But just because a new owner came in, but his house is or his apartment is exactly like that, and it's wild. I helped him hang up a giant shark the other day, a literal shark that's like as large as like 8 feet long. It was insane. It was very heavy. Pretty cool though. But that's what you can do with big ceilings. You can like hang crazy stuff up. Anyways, project settings. This is going to cater to the player's time. And also to the way that our display, the hardware, and the plugin are communicating efficiently. We want to make sure it's efficient. Optimization is key here. One thing that you'll want to be aware of is, maintaining clarity and depth is one thing, but what I want to add on to that is physical health. Believe it or not, physical health is something that is, I'm aware of, at least when I'm creating. Like, what is this actually doing physically to my participant, right? And this is something that any good VR game designer or VR developer is going to be hyper aware of, or yeah, they will be. Should I be using hypo aware? Right? You know how they do that? The hypo, the hyper. It's very confusing to me. It's very easy to look up. I've just always been lazy about it, but something that people are very aware of are these implications of, okay, well, if there is a discrepancy between this frame rate and the sort of refresh frame rate of the monitor or the actual vision or goggles, VR headsets, if there is a discrepancy between those two things, the game's time and the monitor's time, refresh time, uh, all in the midst of your real time, then there could end up being some slight nausea, or perhaps your eyes just get a little irritated. Mine do a little bit sometimes, especially with the old looking glass displays. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, my vision has actually been improving the last 5 years. So you may want to keep looking at these displays because your vision will get better. But I also heard that that's kind of like a normal thing, so I'm not really sure. Anyhow, but it hasn't gotten worse. So that's what I'm saying. But I'm still aware of my participants, and I know that some people get nauseous. I've had people get a little bit nauseous looking at the older display in particular, not with the portrait. I've had people who like their eyes like literally turned red after like 20 minutes of looking at the old display. Uh, might happen to me too, of course, developing it, but not that fast. Anyhow, the moral of the story is we have to be aware of these things because as designers, as creators, we're creating for subjects, for humans, people who to see, look, interact, right? So let me show you some things that will not only help with those physical ailments, but also help with, maybe you want a little bit of vertigo in your subject, right? And you can actually alter that on the fly. But more importantly, uh, to kind of stray away from vertigo, these settings will, if you keep them permanently set for your project, these settings will help with any kind of health related things, but also with the depth, also with the clarity, and not only that, it'll actually help with some aliasing that may occur, especially with regard to 3D. We'll dig into anti-aliasing when we do a little bit more on post-processing, but I'll touch a little bit on that as I dig into some of these settings through Unity. So one thing to note is we have something called, you'll notice that we have a gray sort of background here on this. My Unity is dark gray, where that was light gray. Don't worry about it. It's just an image I found online that kind of illustrates what I wanted. So a lower time step is something that we'll probably be shooting for. You can learn more about these sort of fixed updates and fixed time steps, all via that link. So if you wanted to get into that, expand on that a little bit more, by all means, do so. It's gonna kind of help you understand how time and delta time works within sort of real-time rendering system, right? And what is the difference between a fixed update and a fixed time step? I can't really dig too much into it just because it's it's a little bit of information that might just go outside our timeline here. But what I can say is, unlike the sort of main frame update, which is sort of updates of just this sort of CPU draw calls in general, or GPU, etc. Unity's physics system, when it comes to sort of game time, you might say, it works to a fixed time step. So there is variation, but the variation occurs within the update, if that makes any sense. The fixed time step is almost like a rule. Like, please make sure that this happens within that variable, if that makes sense. And the variable, or the varied sort of, any kind of the updates in the background per se, they have maximums and all that, but the fixed time step is going to prevent some of these sort of skipping of frames, or it may even help with aliasing. But let me just get into what it really is here. So it's important to have fixed time step for the accuracy and the consistency of the simulation. At the start of the physics update, Unity sets an alarm by adding the fixed time step value onto the time when the last physics update ended. So the physics system will then perform calculations until the alarm goes off. Right? That's the fixed time step. So you can change the size of said fixed time step from the time manager, which this is your time manager here. Whoops. Boop. And you can read it from a script if you want. If you want to do it that way, or you can just kind of set it and forget it. Project settings, right? I'll dig into how to get into all that in a second here. Note that a lower value for the time step means more frequent updates to the physics, meaning more accurate rendering, but higher CPU power. Whereas a higher time step equals less frequent updates, easier to render physics, but it has a slow refresh. It's going to kind of, kind of fight with some stuff, and it's just doesn't look good, right? But yeah, ultimately, a fixed time step of 1 is technically supposed to be real time, but it's not going to feel that way in your game. The default is 0.02. Um, it's also, that would actually equate to 50 frames per second. Now, what I want to get into and what I want to kind of highlight and just make you aware of is that our display runs at 60 hertz refresh rate, right? I'm kind of off script here because it's just I made too many notes and I don't need them. So 60 hertz, right? That's your, and sometimes these vary amongst monitors. I'm like looking at 4 monitors right now. 59, it's really probably like 59.94 or something like that, right? Some of them are actually pretty darn close to 60, but in a headset, like a VR headset, we have refresh rates that are 72. If you have the Valve Index, it's like 120 or some ridiculous number. There has been a debate on. Oh, Bev, yeah, you have something here?
Huh? No,
Oh, okay. Somebody here had a Valve Index or was it the VR headset? I thought that it might have been you for some reason.
which VR headset? I have a lot of headsets, but not that one. I don't think.
Oh yeah, that's like it's so hard to get one. It's a Valve Index headset.
Oh, the Valve. I had the Valve. What do you call it? The room scale one Vive when it came out.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah. That was the first one. That's when I was using Unity. And nobody knew how to do anything then. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've yet to get my hands on it, but well, I guess I've been so focused on these displays, but yeah, that uses a crazy refresh rate, and it's really fun. Now, yeah, it's something like 120 or something, right?
Yeah, even Oculus you can push to 120 if you want to. So.
Oh yeah, especially the new ones.
Yep.
So when it comes to developing for these refresh rates, and this is when I make the connection of physical health and time step, right? The refresh rate, if it doesn't have to match perfectly. I'm not saying it has to be like perfect, but you want to be aware of it when you're developing. You can have, and this will get rid of the nausea. It's going to get rid of the headaches. It's going to get rid of the weird eye dry irritation stuff. Everything. It's amazing. This is what I implement for any VR experience I create. I don't create many of them, but I'm very aware of good practices when I can be. Unless the solo project, right? But yeah. So be aware of these items regardless. I will now tell you what the proper fixed time step is for the Looking Glass display. I think that I would like you to update that in your project settings. We'll do it together. So what would it be if your game is running at 60 frames per second and your fixed update is called once per frame for most frames, but not all. We want to fill in the gap and try to guarantee that it doesn't drop frames. In order to do that, we have to find a number that is basically equivalent to the time step we want. So 60, let's say the refresh rate is 60 hertz. That means, it should mean 0.167, I think, something like that, milliseconds. 0.16, something like that. Now, that's for the sort of, that's for the time per frame, essentially, right? However, the fixed time step's going to be a little bit different, and that we want it to be, if it's 16.67 milliseconds for a time step, that means that it's has to be, because if you look at 1 as 1 second, I believe I'm doing the math right there, then what you really want is 0.0167. So we could do something, go to build settings. So we'll do this together. So I'll do it again for you just so you can see what's going on. I'm gonna move this guy here. Go to File, Build Settings, Player Settings, and we want to hit the Time Manager button. I don't know what it's doing here. I must have clicked something. Compiling scripts. Oh, it's because I haven't opened it in a while. There we go. So in the project settings window, we're going to go down to time. You'll notice that I haven't set my settings yet because I wanted to do them with you. I actually have, I have this particular one, fixed time step set to something like 0.013, which in my opinion, that's a little bit too much for the system to handle. So don't do that. That's more so for VR related stuff. Make it exactly what I stated. So 0.0167. That'll get you to 60 frames per second. Thus, it'll get you to match the refresh rate of the monitor, the display. Let's put it that way, plainly. If you wanted your particles to match that, you could do that, but I wouldn't do that just because particles can be pretty taxing to render. So keeping it at 0.03, I think, is perfectly fine. You don't have to do anything more or less than that. You could do more. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But yeah, and then you just keep your time scale at 1. But 0.0167, that's a nice number to have to keep it at basically 60 hertz for a refresh rate and frames per second computation. It'll match the refresh rate. We'll save our work in that regard, and we'll move on to the next slide here, which highlights more settings. A lot of which has to do with the rendering and such. So I'll actually open that up now too. What I have here is, full res for the texture quality. And I'll open up and show you where it is first because I don't have that descriptor. It's gonna be in quality. I haven't done mine either, so I'll be doing them alongside you. That very high. Now what I'm doing here is I'm actually, whenever you press these arrows down and you select something, it'll basically, your build will kind of default to that. Whatever's highlighted green, that's going to be your default, right? So I'll actually just keep it at very high. I do not need ultra. I think that's excessive. And this will be for PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. I think this is for universal windows. Might as well keep that at like high. Usually universal Windows platforms are kind of running on like low end hardware. But yeah. So very high is fine for PC Mac. If you wanted to go all the way to ultra, that's fine. I wouldn't have it as a default. And I'll actually sometimes uncheck these so that I don't have to worry about any of it really going that high if I don't want it to, right? So you can, and I definitely don't want it to go this low, right? So I'll uncheck all this. You can even just completely trash them if you wanted to. But this is a safe bet, right? Now, when we imported the plugin, a couple things changed, or they wanted you to change a couple things. I don't know if you remember, we got that little pop up window, right? That actually said, "Oh well, these settings are ideal. We're just gonna change them for you." We pressed apply changes, and we moved on. Well, I'm here to tell you that there are some things I like better. For shadow distance, in regards to optimization and like good, solid practice, right? Of our creations and the like. I don't need it to be 5,000. Like that is excessive. It's a really large distance, right? So 500 is fine. Even that is excessive, but that's what I keep it at. I do think there is some weird logic to this insanity of 5,000 for shadow distance in regards to what they're getting at, but it's not going to completely alter anything too much. If you want to be extra careful, make it 1,000, right? That's fine, but I don't really think it needs to be 5,000. It's just I haven't noticed too much of a difference, and there's no point in making that any higher than 1,000, in my opinion, for this particular situation. Pixel light count, and this is for the very high settings, by the way. Right? So notice how they change like this. And I'm gonna keep this as the default. I'll let everything just be what it is, as we move forward. Real-time reflection probes, it's good to have them, but you don't really, I think in our case, we'll keep them. Sometimes I will have some textures that are streamed. In this case, I don't, at least not in the outset. And then hard and soft shadows, you definitely want those. If you only have hard shadows, you're going to really be saving a lot of computation power, and it'll optimize the crap out of your work. It's fantastic. But if we're dealing with like, okay, I want this quality level to be like super nice, like you're going to want hard and soft shadows. You don't want to just have the hard shadows. High resolution for the shadows is perfectly acceptable. You don't have to go to very high. And in regards to, obviously, this is also helping out with depth, right? So just keep that in mind. It is relevant to the depth and clarity that I really want to kind of harp on for the whole class. 2 shadow cascades is fine. We don't need like the extra layers. I think 2 is fine. So really, this isn't really a super very high sort of showcase of whatever app you're at, right? But it's high enough where you're gonna get real quality. All this is good for the buffers. 4 bones is good. This is something that we're probably not going to get into, but this has to do with rigs, and rigs meaning like the sort of the structures that make character arms move, and fingers move, right? But it's also attached to a sort of skin, which are the faces, the faces of the model itself that make up the model, right? If we look at the wireframe of any model, you'll see little triangles or quads just making up the 3D model. All of which is attached to these rigs, which are, in a sense, bones or joints that you can move and animate. So that's what that's all about. VSync count has to do with displays and refresh rate, but we don't have to worry too much about that. Every V blank is fine. Keep it as such, all good. Full res, obviously. Definitely want some anisotropic textures, and we're good. That's it for that. You don't have to really do anything more for the quality. But definitely good to note. Obviously, the picture is in the slides, so you don't have to necessarily write it down. But I do think that having these settings proper like this is ideal. You'll notice that I have 512 set for particle raycast budget, just because I just in my holocomic I didn't have a lot of that, right? It wasn't necessary, so I just cut it down. And you can do the same if that's something that you're kind of concerned with. And that's something that's sort of project specific. You can always ask me about, oh, should I do 1024 versus 512? It's not going to make too much of a difference. I just kind of dulled mine down for optimization because I made a very, very big project and I had to. So, um, full screen window resolution and presentation, definitely important here. So, when it comes to resolution and presentation, a couple of things that you should be aware of is you're going to want full screen window. The default is native resolution. All of these are checked, so Mac Retina support. And it's good to have things run in the background. Like, let's say somebody wants to exit and look at their stupid Twitter feed or something, or X feed, whatever they're calling it now. Yeah, I mean, we all have them, right? It's unfortunate. Or at least I have to have it because I have to promote myself. But yeah, you can run it in the background and people will like that, right? So make sure that's a thing. Believe it or not, capture single screen technically doesn't have to be checked, but it was ideal for me in particular because I don't want it to be to accidentally capture something else or so it was nice to have that option to check that. It kind of like it doesn't it's not a sort of foolproof thing, right? Like you can still if you don't have it correctly set up, your actual application could play on a 2D monitor versus the actual looking glass display like you wanted, right? This doesn't really solve that problem completely, but it does help. I don't know the background too much on that, but uh, it just basically means like, hey, like you just want me to capture this screen, right? And that's it, and then it does it. So it doesn't have too much of a sway on what screen. More like it's a single screen. Don't capture any others. That's it. Use player log. I don't mind having that set. It's good. Visible in background. Yes, people can kind of move back and forth. Allowing a full screen switch, not entirely necessary, but it is sort of nice to have in relationship to the SDK itself. It likes that. I'm just going to tell you, it's very picky and it's evolving. It's getting better and better each iteration. For single instance, most definitely. You don't want to accidentally have two of my holocomics running. That would not be good. Basically, it would probably burn your computer alive. Use DXGI flip model swap chain. This references DirectX graphics. I don't know what the I is, to be completely honest, but I do know that DirectX 11 is one thing. I believe that swapping it kind of optimizes DirectX, if I'm not mistaken, with the older version. I'm not an expert on that stuff. I'm not going to get into it. I do keep my support aspect ratios 4 to 3, 5 to 4, 16 to 10, 16 to 9. I check them all. You really don't have to because it's very specific aspect ratio we're working with, right? Like, we're not working with, we're definitely not working with. I mean, in a way, we kind of are, but 4 and 3, I don't know. It's not that small, right? We're definitely more in this territory. Um, other settings, but it's okay to have them checked. Is all I'm saying. Other settings, literally called other settings. This is one thing you're going to notice, and I'm actually going to go ahead and change my settings from last time before I move forward. So I'm in quality now. I'm going to go to player, because that's where these settings are. I'll actually minimize that. And I'm just going to now set it up properly. So I have that. I don't need that. I will force a single instance. All these are on and good. Full screen. All good there. There. Alright, cool. So that's that step. We'll actually move on to other settings after the slide. So here we have gamma. The Looking Glass website is going to, and the documentation is going to, say like, okay, well, really, linear, linear color space is the better way to go for the Looking Glass display. And this has to do with the sort of linear parallax, in addition to just some optimization tips, right? If you actually hover over color space, you'll get a little bit of an info. Oops, I'm not actually clicked on here. You should get some info. If you don't, then that's fine. I'll just describe it to you. Linear, and we can actually look it up. I think that'll actually be even better. I will often do this because I think that some people are better explaining certain things. So linear versus gamma color space. So in this text, they tend to be, so textures tend to be saved in sort of gamma color space, right? Shaders expect a linear color space. So as such, when textures are sampled in shaders, gamma-based values lead to inaccurate results. Right? And to overcome this, you can set Unity to use an RGB sampler to cross over from gamma to linear sampling. It ensures a linear workflow with all inputs and outputs of a shader in the correct color space, resulting in a correct outcome. Now, for me, although linear might be a workflow that is more precise with renderings, sometimes you may want the gamma workflow, and that's just I prefer it, or at least I preferred it for my previous project, right? Some platforms or hardware only support gamma format. A lot of them support both, of course, but it's kind of a toss up. Sometimes you want the gamma. What you want to do to sort of bypass the sRGB sampling and color space is go into gamma mode by unchecking the sRGB color texture checkbox for your texture. It'll just, but we don't really have to worry about all that. I basically want to just highlight linear color space. It's going to give you a more accurate rendering than working in gamma color space, but sometimes we want gamma in order to have a certain look or feel, but also just to kind of work with whatever. We may have something that doesn't even support gamma, right, or only supports gamma, etc. Just wanted to throw that out there. It's okay to use linear. It's just not my personal favorite, and just for my holocomics, I will use linear for most other things. So linear is the recommendation, but I have used gamma for this particular project. Just want to throw that out there. So all of these settings are valid, and you should just be aware of them. So static batching, very, very good to have on. Dynamic batching, very, very good. Static means we're going to batch all the static objects, and that's that, right? Looks like a couple people had out here.
Just me now.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, yeah. Bev went away too, huh? Okay, good.
Yeah, Chad had to go, and then Bev. I don't know when Bev left because I had to run to the kitchen real quick, but I've been listening.
That's all right. Yeah. So I was on a roll, anyways. So
Yeah, you're really getting into it.
Auto Graphics API for Windows, Auto Graphics API for Mac and Linux. All of those should be checked, and they probably will be checked anyways, as far as default goes and the like. If we look at what I have just kind of set up here, I will keep it at linear for this one in particular. Totally fine with that. Why do I not have dynamic batching? That's interesting. This should be checked. Oh yeah, this is like the default stuff. So I haven't done my settings here yet. So use display in HDR mode. Believe it or not, the display doesn't really support HDR mode quite yet. It obviously has high definition, but let me just what I'd like to kind of highlight is that the HDRP render pipeline. Oh no, yeah, HDR render pipeline it doesn't support. Yeah, the actual plugin itself. The display would obviously display something that's HDR, but what I have for my settings, regardless, is I've checked display in HDR mode. And this is going to increase the bit depth while also just maintaining a really nice quality. So, I just want to make sure I did that time thing with everybody. Yes, I did. And for the player. So we'll keep that checked. Use display in HDR mode. I will put it up to a bit depth of 16. We'll do the defaults for sampler precision. That's fine. We do not need this. And sRGB write mode is good for, frame. You don't really want it on just because you don't really need it. I mean, we already kind of made all of our assets in sRGB, so we don't really have to worry too much about that. And this also relates to something in particular with Vulkan settings, so nothing to really worry about there. This is fine. I do have some settings down here that are in the actual, slideshow. This OB only supported. You can ignore that. But yeah, copy the settings I have, whatever it is in regards to the Mac App Store options. Technically, you could actually ignore that, but I have something there, so I have that in. And that's that for the most part in regards to the other settings for our project. And right now, what I'll do, I'm going to we'll take a 10-minute break, and I will get some water. If you want to do the same, Rory, go for it, and I'll be back. And then we'll probably dig into let's see what we got here for the agenda. Yes, the animation, optics, all those goodies. All this will be next. So I will see you at 1:26-ish.
Gotcha.
All right. Here
That was a bit more than 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh, I was 2 minutes late.
You're late.
Oh my goodness. All right. So
I'm gonna remember this.
I know. I'm in trouble.
You get one tardy. That counts as an absence, by the way, according to the syllabus. So.
Well, I've yet to upload my 219 syllabus, so you know.
You got like a week.
Yeah, I do have exactly a week. I do. So Unity. This is gonna be obviously review for you. So yeah, hopefully that's not annoying. But
Boo. Boo.
but I think that I am gonna have I'm gonna throw in some things that are actually pretty new because I don't think that you've really dove into post processing too much yet. So that'll
If
be
you what if you teach me all of 3D so that I can be the TA for 3D next semester?
that'll be a separate course. Yeah,
Not
no,
too bad.
yeah, I'll have to. I'll think about it. I'll think about it. So yeah, let's get into the some animation basics while also highlighting some aliasing and how objects work together. One thing that's going to be new to you, Rory, is some of the objects that work together. So there's something that occurs in the Looking Glass display in particular that doesn't quite manifest the same way on the screen. So this will be very informative, specific to the display. Actually,
I think I
So,
broke mine.
You broke the display.
I
Oh,
think
oh my goodness, that's insane.
because it splits down the middle and
Yeah. Oh,
and
it
I
does?
yeah, like when I look at it, like if I look straight at the middle, it's like two separate images. And I couldn't like no matter what I did, like even if I started a new project, like it wouldn't fix itself. And it also has
Oh.
a scratch on the screen. So
Oh, this could be. Did you scratch it or did the cat scratch it?
my cat didn't scratch it.
Oh.
I think it's because I didn't know this class was like asynchronous, and I brought my stuff on vacation.
Oh, yeah.
So I think TSA took it out because they thought it was a weapon. They thought it was a gun. They genuinely thought it was a gun. I don't know
Oh,
why.
yeah. They don't like these devices. Sometimes they don't say anything, but the old generation one, they were like, "What the heck is this?"
What did it look like?
Well, it's you can hold it up. But it's basically like a big block of lucite, which is like basically like a really nice plexiglass, essentially. So it's
Oh,
a
okay.
very heavy, big, and it's actually, oh, it's unplugged because I'm not using it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's giant thing.
that's cool though. I
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like that. I kind of like that better. I'm not gonna
yeah,
lie.
it's pretty wild, yeah. And everything's just kind of inside of it, but you'll notice a difference though with the quality. I mean, portrait display is amazing compared to that.
Okay.
So let's get into some animation. First and foremost, I am gonna actually, just because I don't like how cat and the boat, my other stuff. This here, just want to back it up a little bit. I think it's a little bit too tight together, and I want to make a game object. I'm gonna make what they call a quad. Be the object quad. I'll press R on the keyboard. That up size I want. And I'll probably make it a little bit transparent. Let's see. And this will actually help me demonstrate some of the stuff I was talking about before with regard to things. If you look at the slide here, sometimes a sprite in a 3D scene can populate in a weird way, and more adjustments are necessary. For the Looking Glass, I'll actually get into that. That's kind of what I was referencing there when I was talking about that. So first and foremost, let me just get this situated. So I want to have this just to kind of cool down everything in the back. I want to have a material that sits on this. So material tags, I'll do create material. This is going to be a very basic, like flat, transparent. And I have some new options here. So we're still using, I am going to use this shader here, standard. I may be changing this to be a fade or transparent, but let's just first look at what we can do while it's opaque. Obviously, probably not going to change because it is an opaque rendering mode. So if we go to transparent, we should be able to see something occur here with the transparency. Now, nothing's happening yet with this object because I haven't put the material on it yet, but I am going to eventually. So I'll actually do something like that, maybe warm it up a little bit, and I will probably just drag it right on. Now, one thing to note within Unity, or this it should also happen in Unreal, is that you want to be aware of the order of rendering, because things will pop through other things regardless of if it's transparent or if it's whole. Transparent, when in transparent mode though, you have to be careful because that's the reason why it's popping through. If you look at this material here, you'll see that there's a sorting mode, and this can be changed. You can do from shader. Obviously, it's transparent, so that's not going to do anything. You can do geometry, not going to do anything. Alpha test, not going to do anything. I've set it to transparent, so that's what it wants to be, right? If I go opaque, then yeah, it's going to be opaque. And I can't actually even adjust the alpha, right? If I go with fade, it's going to be very similar to transparent, but it's going to let everything else cut right through it. So I have to be aware of that as I move forward and adjust anything like a transparency. How can we prevent that? Well, you can adjust these variables here to some degree, depending on the situation. Let me see if I can. Oh, if it's gonna let me. Might not. But all I really want to get at is this is basically the order of how the shader is rendering. If I go from shader, nothing happens. So yeah, you just have to be aware of it. Not the end of the world, but these are things that that can have an effect. So if that's the case, then what I would want to do is not use a standard shader, right? I would actually want to use something like, so I would go into my shader here, and I would simply change it. So I would go to maybe unlit and transparent, right? And then I would be able to, I'd have to apply a texture of sorts, and then I can really adjust all this stuff. So that's an option. Or maybe it's, oh, let's just make it a sprite, right? Now, because it's a sprite, it is overlaid over the top of at least one of the sprites. In this case, it's that very back there, right? The back sprite. But it's not overlaying on this one because I believe I have made these a particular default one. So I have to adjust my order here. So if I am going to do that, it's a different sort of sorting. So I'd have to go in and let's just see what happens if I do that. All right, now what happened? It looks like it went backwards. What if I do 3200? Now it's definitely forwards, and I have no kind of nothing's really getting nothing's fighting each other, right? Remember this was popping in and out, this background one. Now with regard to getting in front of these ones, obviously I am in front physically in front of these, but if I wanted those to be in a sort of particular order so that they're not being so that they are being overlaid by this panel, I would go in and make this. We can test that out. You kind of have to kind of test where you want things. We can actually just keep going like this. That can also help, like if you do alpha test or just transparent, things like that. It's all kind of a play. So if I do 3800, what happens? That's definitely going to be in front. And it looks like because this doesn't have an actual sprite on it, I can't actually get it in front of this other one, at least not easily. So the solution is to not use that at all, and instead actually make a 2D sprite. Did that, it would be, we don't have 2D on here, mainly because, just get a panel here, that's fine. Yeah, that'll work. A little bit too big for us, but that's okay. Definitely different than what I'm looking for, so we're gonna undo that. And we're gonna select this. We'll press F on the keyboard just to get us back here. Go to create. We'll go to, well, I can't do that. Where's my sprites? Sprite. So oftentimes what you need in order to actually have sprites is you need the 2D package. So let's go in here. I'm gonna go to Unity Registry and I'm just gonna get 2D sprites just so I can use them. I'll install the package. Doesn't take very long. Installing. And for these, you don't really, I'm gonna save my work. You don't really need to adjust any dialog box because it's kind of inherent within Unity, right? So now if I go to game object, you'll see it. I not only have 3D object, but I have 2D object sprites. So I can just make a square if I want. I can blow it up to whatever size I wish. I can use the sorting layers, which makes it much easier. I'll put it at 3, so that's in front of everything, because the others are at 0, 1, and 2. And I'll bring that forward a bit, so it's just on the cusp, back of the aphid there. Looks like I have the cat at about 3 as well, or maybe not. Yeah, I do actually. So maybe we'll make this 4, so we don't have to even worry about it. Cat's gone. Happy pappies. And finally do what I was talking about. But that's an example of what I was trying to get at when it came down to there are sometimes weird situations when you combine 3D and 2D. And that's one of those scenarios. In this case, it wasn't, it had nothing to do with the display. It had to do with the shader we were using and the object. The object being a quad and not a sprite. There are other things that may occur later on where it is more specific to the Looking Glass display, and I'll definitely be highlighting that when it comes about. For now, let's go into some animation, and I'll also dig into some post-processing elements as well. I'm gonna put some more 3D objects in my scene. Feel free to also do that. And I'll just do it while I'm with you. I'm not gonna pause the recording or anything. So here we go. I'll play. I want to put. Oh, there's a lamp. I'll put this rose in here. I think that's nice. And I'll put the rose. Put this rose. Oh, it's so tiny. Tiny rose. Okay, there we go. This actually is telling me it does not have a material attached, so we definitely have to get something for it. And I'll just place a sort of generic material. I'll right click in my materials folder. I'll go up to create and material. Flower. I do have this flower UV mapped, but I'm not going to do that today. I think it's just too much to get into at the moment. So I'll just make a simple material. Maybe something like a pink or something. Well, we have too much pink in here already. More like that might be good. And the beauty of materials within Unity is that they can all still be adjusted even if there's no images attached or anything. So feel free to mess around with these controls. I don't want this to be too shiny, so I'm gonna kind of level out the smoothness. The metallic's gonna be kind of dulled down a little bit. And I don't have more than one object with this material, so I don't need GPU instancing. That's usually when you would use it, is on static objects usually that are all using the same UV map and material. And they all kind of bundle together, so there's only one draw call versus several draw calls per object. Kind of a nice, handy optimization technique. So do note that for optimization. Definitely a good one. And I'll just plop this material onto the flower. It's blue now. Nice and simple. W on the keyboard. Move it over. Maybe I'll rotate it a little bit. Go larger. There we go. Now, because it's a flower, perhaps I will actually make it a little smaller, but not too much smaller. F on the keyboard, and I'll bring this back so that it's not too close to the front. Probably hard to see on the display from your perspective, but let's make it a little larger for everyone. There we go. Nice. Bunny Bug can move over as well. Back. That's good. Alright, cool. So, let's do that. There we go. I'll actually dull this down a little bit more. Doesn't have to be too crazy. There we go. What if it's more like this, though? That could be interesting. Definitely easier to see things. And then I'll take this guy out. We don't need him. There we go. Cool. So yeah, kind of a janky setup, but all I really want to do is make sure that you know how to animate and show you some optimization stuff. At the moment, we had the Bunny Bug here, and they're not doing anything. So if I press play, nothing's happening. Also, you'll notice that my hollow play capture kind of dipped out there for a second. You can, if that happens, just kind of go in there, toggle it, toggle preview, and you'll be all set. I typically don't use Control E because Control E just usually it's connected to something else and it makes a mess. That at least has happened to me before. I'm going to clear out my console because I got a little null reference from the game window. One comment and something that would resolve this is if you did make a new project and you use the Looking Glass Capture 2.1. So it would be the 2.1 version of the HoloPlay plugin, basically. And that actually will help eliminate that. I don't know, it happened to me one time, so I can't say it eliminates it, but there are other things on it that's cool. So you should actually just download it. And it's in alpha right now. It's no longer in beta. So it's perfectly feasible to obtain. Excuse me. On the website. That was an unexpected yawn. Came out of nowhere. Usually I suppress them. Alright. Save your work and let's move on. So what I usually do is I'll put this animator window up and I'll put the animation window on my other screen. But because of the situation of presentation, I'm going to just kind of do a little side-by-side action with them, just so you can still see stuff. So the animator and animation sounds very similar, doesn't it? And in a way they are. The animator is actually a finite state machine that helps connect different animations together. So if you are actually in something like, if you have like one animation that you want to play simultaneously to another animation, it's completely feasible, right? I'm going to show you how to do that. Some of this actually might be a little bit new to you, Rory, so it could be beneficial, so that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So if I go into my scene again, you'll notice that I just have the actual Looking Glass capture selected, so I have to select the bunny bug. And first things first, for best practice reasons, I want to make sure that anything in a folder that is going to be animated, or anything in a parent folder, I should say, anything that's a child to a parent, I want to make sure that that parent is zeroed out, or 000, and is set to the origin so that it animates in correspondence to proper position. Believe it or not, you will have problems if it's not 000. It doesn't happen right away. It just kind of happens eventually. The more work you do, it's very strange, but it does happen. So just be aware of that. Now, keeping it at a sort of origin point, and then the children elsewhere is perfectly fine, though. So tree scene, blah blah blah, right? X, Y, and Z are completely different from each other. It's in a very specific location, but all under the guise of an origin of sorts, which is called environment. Right now, what I just did is I right-clicked on the hierarchy, and I'm just going to create empty. In doing so, allows me to create another sort of parent folder. So I'll call this character. And yes, I'm going to zero that baby out. 0, 0, 0. Press enter. Very good. There's your character folder. Nice, nice, nice. We'll plop the old characters in there. Bunny Bug first, and then the rows. And I just control clicked those two. Now I'm going to select and drag into the character folder. That did not work. Do it again. There we go. Not sure what this R is, but something. Cool. Now I want to attach any of my animations that I'll do for a certain number of objects. I usually attach the animator to the parent. Now, alternatively, if you want to get real crazy, you can actually just attach it to a folder that is a parent to everything. I'm not going to do that here, but it is a thing. And it does kind of consolidate how many animators you have to create, which is kind of nice. But secondly, what we kind of forgot was we need an animation folder. We don't have one, right? So we'll right click. After going into assets, we'll right click either in here or on top of the assets folder itself in the project panel. Create and folder. Call this animation. We'll go in here. There's your animation folder. And we are going to now right click within the animation folder and create animator controller. This is actually going to be for the characters, so we'll actually just say characters. I try to keep it a little bit different than what the actual parent folder says. Characters is good, because there are multiple. And then you can either drag that right on top of this, or you can select it, drag it into here, which is the inspector for character. And you'll see it says controller characters. Now, when it comes down to animating something, well, we have to add an animation to it. But it doesn't have to be necessarily directly linked to the object because we have an animator. So if we go to create, after right clicking in the animation folder, we will go to create, scroll over, go to animation now underneath animator controller. Select the option. Your asset has been made, but it isn't in the animator controller yet. We still have to place it in. So let's first make a name out of this animation. Bug loop. So this loop here is just going to be our sort of background layer loop. And we'll place it into probably a separate layer in the animator, which I'll get to in a minute. This one here is going to be bug action. So this will probably not be a loop, but something. Oh, whoops, I made a folder by accident. Right click, create, animation, bug action, enter. This is just going to be like a one-time thing it does, right? While it's in this loop. So now we can either select this here. Well, actually, we'll go to character, animator. You'll see that our animator has a base layer now, and that's because we've selected something that has a controller attached to it. But there are no animations. So let's put some in. For the first layer, I like to put my sort of one-off actions in the base layer. So I'll place that in there. Typically what I'll do, if there's like a button component, let's say, some kind of button that makes the action occur, like a trigger, then I will have some kind of waiting period here, or like a sort of nothing state. Or I'll completely shut down animations and then activate them. It depends on how I'm using it. For this exercise, I'm just going to show you an action that can occur after some time while another action is constantly happening. Excuse me. Now, for that other action or loop that I want to make, that has to be implemented on a layer separately. So in this case, it would be, we can call it the looper bug layer. And we want the weight to be all the way up to 1. And however, we want the blending mode to be additive. So go into that blending, go into additive, and that's that. And now for this layer, we're just going to double check. Override's good. No need to have an avatar really. It's really not that necessary in this regard. Avatars are great though when you are using something very specific, like a model or character that has a rig, right? Or if you want to emulate something in particular and have it be consistent across models, avatars are good. In this case, in our base layer, we have the bug action and the loop. We have nothing yet, so let's put our loop in there. We'll just simply select it, drag it in. There you go. Now, one thing that may happen within your animations, the animations themselves, is it could already be on loop time, or it could be set to legacy, which wouldn't be good. Now, if it's on legacy, well, it's not bad. It just means it can't work with Animator. So keep that in mind. And in order to fix that, you would select your animation and do what I did previously. This is normal mode. You'll just kind of see this type of inspector for that particular animation. If you want to edit or check for legacy, make sure that it's not on legacy so that it actually works with the animator panel or system, finite state machine. Then it needs to be not legacy. You can also change other things, such as, in this case, it's just once. Just play once, and that's it. That will kind of happen by default, so it's nothing you really need to check. We can now get out of debug mode, go into normal mode again, and all that was in these 3 dots above the initial 3 dots for the component. Now in this case with the bug loop, we do want it to loop, so we don't have to go into debug mode to do this. We can just select that. This is all good here, don't worry about it. More show for characters. And we'll just start animating. So now we have our animation window open. We have bug loop initiated here. We have bug action initiated here. And before I get into it, though, I just want to touch base on finite state machines because it's important for context purposes. I'm actually going to leave a couple of links. So Animator. Whoops. Animator. Unity. These are all little scripting items. I don't really want that. I don't need classes right now. I just want to, this isn't what I want. There you go. Where is that? Okay, yeah, it's actually pretty good. It has a tutorial on it. It might be a little old, but oh, that's great. Oh wait, it goes up to 2019. It would still apply though. This is actually a good little link here. I would definitely advise checking that out. So I'll just do that. And I'm gonna actually add this to our little lesson here. Okay. There we are. Link that up and we're good to go. So yeah, a finite state machine. A finite state machine is basically, in a very simple way, it's a number of things that can happen uh, in a given state. So you have different states, sort of a number of states that an object can be in or a thing can perform, right? Think of it as like it's almost like, well, it's like a shape changer, right? Like I want you to be in the state of a lasagna, or I want you to be in the state of, a pineapple or something, right? Some strange thing. The state could also refer to emotions. Oh, I want you to. I was trying to make you angry, and then you're angry. Your state is sad, right? So you can kind of think of it in like facial expressions for an animation, right? It's switching between sad and happy facial expression, or walking and running, or sitting and standing. Those are the states I'm talking about. The animator panel helps you control them, but also helps you to actually manipulate them as well in different ways, transition speeds and different things like that. So to give you a sort of definition that's a little bit more technical than my simplified version, finite state machine. I'll actually do this just so it's that, and we'll plop that right on in there. And that'll do it. This is finite state machine. So a number of states, or a number of states a given object can be in, allowing the states to change back and forth among each other based on a given system or choice or trigger, etc. So pretty cool. Super cool stuff actually. Makes animation a lot easier. So I animated a cat for my holocomic, not just the 2D one, but the 3D one, and that was probably one of the most advanced. Well, okay, it wasn't the most advanced animation I've done, but it's definitely advanced, right? Like you have to really actually study cats and all this stuff. And I didn't even have to do this, right? I could have just bought a cat, like off of whatever site, and there's the cat, and the head's already rigged and animated. But it was more of like a challenge, and I wanted it to be custom so I don't get sued or whatever. And so I went ahead and dove into how to have this cat walk. Okay, well, how does a cat walk, right? How does a cat transition from walking and then sitting, or licking its paw and then yawning, right? Or stretching? The finite state machine, which is the animator panel, helped immensely with that. As far as giving me everything I needed to make that happen, it did, right? As far as, basically I could use this any state thing, and things could be connected to it, and it would just kind of loop through different things, and the cat would be idling, and then it would be sitting, and it would be really tired, right? Really, really powerful stuff. And there's more power within it that I'm not even getting into right now, right? So for now, though, let's make this animation. So we'll go ahead and I'm just going to select my object in the scene. This is going to go away, this animator controller, while I'm animating, and that's perfectly fine. So as you can see, there's no animation attached to the actual object. It's attached to the parent folder. This helps with optimization, but also gives me many options. I could animate anything, right? I don't have to animate the bunny bug. I can animate the rose, right? Then, after selecting what you want to animate, you just do that. And I am in bug action, so this is just one action that I want the bunny bug to do. In this case, I'll probably have it, well, first and foremost, before I do anything, I'm going to copy this position because I want it to start where it is. And to do that, you would go up to these three dots, copy the component, and that copies this here, all the positioning, it copies the rotation, it copies the scale. It's literally copying the transform. Wherever or whatever state the transform's in, copying that, and now we can paste it later after we make an adjustment, just to kind of start off the animation where I wanted it to start. So now I'll paste the component values. I'll select the same three dots in the transform component. It shifts back over that way. Now I'm exactly where I started, so that's good. Zooming out, sometimes it's hard to kind of gauge if you're actually accurately on a particular key frame that you want to be on. So I usually zoom in until I see 5, 5, or a 5 after, you know what I mean? So it's going by 5s instead of 10s. This helps me to identify where I have to be, and that it's fairly accurate. So how long, and I'm scrolling across this by using the middle mouse button. How long do I want this action to take place? I think I just want it to kind of be like this. And then, so it turns that way. And then another second goes by, and it turns that way. And then maybe not a full second, but something happens here. And I'll actually just paste what I had pasted before and bring it back. So now if we press play, not the smoothest of transitions here, but that's all right. You can smooth them out with curves and tangents. We're not going to dig too deep into that, but that is a thing. Now, bringing it back to the actual flower itself, or rather the looking glass display itself, motion is going to be captured at a certain frame rate. So it's good to be aware of how fast your stuff is going. If you have something zipping by, it might not even be captured, right? Well, it will be, but it's just not going to look right. If you have a very big item, such as this bunny bug that clearly has a lot of faces, but not too many. I optimize this guy, but still. Then you may not want to move that object too much, right? I'm just trying to bring it back to the looking glass display and how to optimize your animations. Maybe, instead of moving the object a lot, we move to this, something simpler around it. There are a lot of illusions you can create. Just use your imagination in that regard. But ultimately just optimize your assets so you can animate them however you want. So right here, and I'm still in bug action, so I am gonna hit record again at some point. Right now I'm in object mode, it looks like, or local mode I should say. I want to be in global for my pivot, just so that I have a little bit more accuracy and I know where the heck I am. And I'm going to copy the transform for the rows. So I go to those three dots on transform, copy component. I'll actually move rows up. I'll press Control V for the rows, bring the rows back down. Then I'll just kind of I'll give it a little jud this way actually, a little jab, and then somehow it accurately went back. I don't recall doing that, but maybe I did. Oh, okay, it started out that way. It goes back. Oh no, it doesn't go fully back. Okay, so yeah, I'll go ahead and just copy component, paste component, and that should do it. Let's just copy this again because I think it's different. We'll copy the rows, transform component, paste. There we go. Okay. And you'll notice you have keyframes here, right? That's the sort of beauty of animation in Unity. You'll have many of these. There are curves as well, like I mentioned, but I'm not gonna get too complicated here yet, so we'll keep that as is. This is, this is like how many. This is like the sort of sample rate. This is a sort of, you can filter things out. Adding a keyframe. This is an event. And events happen and are used as sort of triggers. So if I wanted to go to another scene, I would put an event, like after an animation, I would place an event at the end of an animation, and then I would connect a script to that event, and it would go to my next scene. Delete that for now because you don't need it. This drop down here are the animations within the animator controller. You have the bug loop, the bug action, all of which is in here because in Animator I have them in there. Makes sense? So now I will go ahead and allow that to be whatever it is. I'm not going to change anything. I'll go to bug loop and let's just do a little up and down action with the bunny bug here. Copy this. Paste. Then I'll go to 1. Bring bunny bug up there, and maybe I go to. I like to stop at 143 a lot because it's Mr. Rogers' body weight. Believe it or not, and Mr. Rogers was obsessed with that number. And he made sure he only weighed 143 pounds. And the obsession with the number comes from the fact that it's just like the amount of letters for each word in the phrase "I love you." So I is 1, 4, 3, yeah. So it's kind of cute. I actually put a lot of that in my code just as like a fun thing. So that is in a lot of my timing of things. But so let's press play. See how we like this loop. That's good enough for this demonstration. And it's going to loop. So let's see all of it in action, right? Before I go to bug action, though, I just want to make one animation that's sort of an idle. Just a sort of waiting period. And we can do a couple things. We can't do it here. We have to we can just make a state. So if you right click, it's actually a good demonstration to show you how to make a state. So if you actually just right click in here to create state, you can create an empty one. But we want to do it in the action. Okay. So right click in animator, create, empty. It'll say new state. Give it a name. Jolly. Oh, jolly dance waiting. It will plop that in. We don't really need a motion. It's not really the best practice, to be honest. You want to put something in there. What I'll do is uh, if it's waiting, I definitely put something in, right? Meaning like if it's actually something that is waiting for a trigger to then move to another state, definitely put an animation in there. Make sure it's not looping, so you're not like frying the brains out of your computer. Not that that'll happen, but it's obviously optimization is a key here, right, for the looking glass. Now, let's say I want to, and navigating in this is pretty much the same as navigating in the scene, by the way, just putting that out there. When it comes down to the actual waiting period here that I want to make, I don't need to worry about optimization because it's just going to go right to the next state, right? So, but this isn't in the right spot. This needs to be default. This right here is currently default. I want it to be the next animation up from default. So you can right click on Jolly Dance Waiting or whatever you've named your new states. Set as layer default state. It'll switch over to there. After which, you'll right click again on it. You'll select Make Transition. Bring it over to there. And now it'll just kind of run through this and then jump to that, right? But there are options. So this doesn't have motion, thus you cannot actually preview it. That's what that warning's saying. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Like I said, we're just going to kind of use it as a little waiting period before we jump into bug action animation. Exit time. By default, it's just going to go into just going to make it like a 1 second animation, so fading out from 0.75. I think that's fine how it is. You can adjust these times though, like what's the transition duration, etc. That's totally fine. And it does blend the animations, so it's very very cool in that regard. That's one of the powers of an animator panel, right? An animator controller is that there's blending of animations. It's pretty cool, and you don't have to do anything more than set an action up and set some states up, right? But obviously, it's not that simple. Like I understand there's some complexities, but all in all, it makes the job easier than doing it all with C#. So we're good on that. We're good on that. Let's press play and see what we got. So I'll actually bring this over to here. I'm gonna now press play. We're gonna see what it's doing over there in the old looking glass display. Of course, it shut off. Hold on a second. So like that. Alright, looks like the aspect ratio is a little bit off, but you can see in there that yeah, it's good. I mean, it's pretty much exactly how I wanted it to perform here. That back up and running here. There we go. There's your one action, and there's your idle. Now, did the rows actually? Oh, it did move. Okay, good. So there we are. That's now the looping animation. Let's see this in action now, so we have that in our minds. Bug action happened once, and then it stopped, right? Looper bug, always looping. The bug loop, always looping. And you can move these panels around. It's very fun. I love visual scripting. It's a very fun thing. So yeah, go ahead and test that out. Have fun with it. You could even, well, it looks like the bug action happened again. Probably because I went and clicked on something. But yeah, it's pretty cool. We can actually go ahead and we can actually do that, and then it'll go bug action, and it'll go back up there, and it'll come back down. So many options. So you have, and I'll just do that again. If you want to make a transition to go to something else, you simply right-click on a state and make it happen. So in this case, make transition to exit. Now it's going to happen. Well, it's not going to know what to do, really, because it's like, well, all right, I have one going there, I have one coming down there. I don't think I should exit yet, because I have to go here first, right? So then it gets stuck, and it actually doesn't exit, doesn't stop. Now, the problem with that is that it's going back to a sort of original position, and it just looks wacky, and you don't want that. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll just keep it as is for now. I'll probably exit this. Yeah. And we'll keep it one action. That's it. That's all, and we're good. But it blends it together. It's nice. You don't have to worry about it being kind of choppy, right? That's the beauty of it. Animators, the animator controller helps you with making it non-chop. The non-chop. No chop. So before I conclude that, I want to just briefly go over some post-processing items. And this will be more of like a blend into next lesson, or maybe even the following lesson. So we've made an animation. We've gone through and identified certain project settings that are pretty much, I mean, they are very important to what we're creating, right? Player settings. We'll go to other settings. We did some stuff there. We went through resolution and presentation, looked at best practices there, along with fixed time step. How can we make our participants more comfortable? How can we make them literally less sick, less nauseous, while also refining how the computer is rendering in relation to the display, refresh rate versus FPS, etc. Helping the computer along the way. Now, do keep in mind the rules of that fixed time step. Look back on the slides. You know, what does a higher time step do? What does a lower time step do? And that's pretty much, that's what I want you to get out of this. It's in relation to refresh rate for the Looking Glass display. As far as animation goes, the optimization in particular that correlated to the display, was basically it's the need for more animator controller, less legacy. You don't want to use legacy animation too much, and I'll show you what legacy animation is real quick. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just, it's just like a deprecated feature. It's literally just, oh, I want to put an animation on each object, which for optimization purposes is not good, right? There's way too much going on. So it's not as efficient to process. Let's put it that way. So what you can do to get a new component is you can actually just say add component. In this case, animation, not animator. And this is how you make a sort of a legacy animation clip. It's okay to have some of these in your scenes. It's just you got to be careful with, how you're doing things and how many times you're doing things. So create animation, cat wiggle or something like that, right? Usually I'll use camel case. It's okay because it's a demo that I'm not, but I'm just going to do it anyways. Wet cat and the cat wiggle. Well, it's not attached to any animator yet, so and it won't be because it's legacy. So I'm just gonna plop it in here, and it should play through it automatically when I start the game. Now the difference is with legacy, there is no blending between animations. There is no, there isn't as much. There aren't as many options when it comes to interactability or interactivity. So that's why it's kind of deprecated. It's like, okay, well, yes, animation, we need that, but let's not use the legacy animation as is unless we have to, absolutely have to. I think I only used it once in this way in my Hollow comic, or I try to only do it once or twice. That's it. It can be convenient sometimes, right? But it's completely unnecessary. It's not, doesn't really need to happen. Animator plus animation, that's the way to go, right? We don't need the physics animated, so we can keep those out. And we'll just take our little cat here. We'll go ahead into animation, and have to put the cat wiggle in there. There we go. Cat wiggle has populated. So make sure that you also add it to here. I forgot to tell you that. We'll now record. Hit that record button, and it's not really wiggle. I'm just gonna go up with the cat. I'm just gonna have the cat go up and down. Maybe I'll do something crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'll spin the cat like crazy. Copy component. Bring the cat up and this. And then paste component back into the wet cat transform. Okay. And at 30, a half a second, I'll go ahead and I'll move the cat up and have the cat rotate 360 degrees. And then at 1 second, I'll drop the cat back down. So I'll just paste the component. And we got a cat wiggle, right? Like that's the beauty of that. Cat's going wild back there. Cat's gone wild. Yeah, that's that. There's your new video game, Cat's Gone Wild, Rory. That's it. So yeah, that's the legacy animation. Easy peasy. Just wanted to show you. Save as, or save rather. And I will go into scene view. Probably undock that just because. Put it in there actually. Clear the console. And when it comes to post-processing, listen in because I'm about to show you. And we're just going to kind of set up the post-processing today and maybe talk a couple features, but that's about it. So in the Hollow Play Capture, we have a couple options. We have one being that we have these kind of like, oh, what do I want the background to be for the clear flags? It could be this, could be that. Solid color is what I'm going for, so that's what I keep it at. Dynamic resolution, definitely want that. Anyhow, you have options to change the camera, right? But you don't really have too many options when it comes down to any kind of tonal changes or values of sort of bloom values or ambient occlusion. You have that in the materials, but not in the environment, right? So a lot of stuff like that can be kind of toggled around and messed with. I wouldn't mind doing that here. Let's see, that make the lighting a little bit more interesting. I think I briefly went over lighting before. I had mentioned that, and I did, yes. I had mentioned that having 3 points of light is ideal. So, but you have to be strategic about it. You want to just have lights here and lights there, right? It's got to be sort of a triangle. And a lot of the times, it's good to have one in the back as well. Let me. Looks like I have here, here. There it is. I was wondering where it went. And I'm actually going to put it here just so I can get a little bit more reflective light on my character. Just makes it look a little bit nicer, gives it a little bit of dimension. And in a sense it's very it's kind of like fake natural or reflected light, right? I'm kind of like forcing it to happen. Reflected light usually is, if I hold up this mug here, oh wait, no, I don't even have to use the mug as an example. Well, it's a hilarious mug, by the way. I'll just show off the mug. I don't need Google. My wife knows everything. I don't have a wife though, so I guess I guess I don't know anything. That's good coffee. I know that.
Is it just black coffee?
Yeah, it's the way to go,
What?
So now, with all these lights in place, we can move forward into the post-processing bit. And I think what I was going to get into was how the reflected light looks like on my shirt. So not on this side, but so it's darker here, right? Actually, let me see if I can get a better example. Okay, so it's like a slight darkness along here, and then there's almost like a little highlight. You can actually see it on the arm area, like right along this area here. A little tiny strip of light. That's basically what I mean by reflected light. Like something's being reflected off of something else and then imparted onto the object from the back or something. And this is just classic, uh, how the world looks, right? It's how we would want to draw or paint it or whatever, what have you. I don't like that the flower has like that shadow on top. Okay. So that's for lighting, and it is important, especially with the looking glass display, that we get our lighting right because the way that the depth looks or wants to work is usually, it has a lot to do with not only, these techniques I'm teaching you, but also with like how the actual field of view is in relation to certain environment components, and having the right lighting really makes things pop. Let's just put it that way. I mean, this already looks better than when we started today. You know what I mean? Just because of the addition of this light or moving this light, only from that, right? So definitely a very good asset to know how to put your lights in the right spot. Good to have in the tool belt, so to speak. All right. Moving forward into post-processing, one thing that we have to kind of outline and highlight for your skill sets is, well, how the hell do you even get the darn thing in there? So we have post-processing elements from the Unity registry already. That's kind of like standard post-processing. You can pop in there, right? But HoloPlay comes with, or if you're using the 2.1 version, it's called Looking Glass Capture or something. It has its own HoloPlay post-processing folder. If we select this, we can kind of maneuver through them here. We probably won't need to, we can probably just skip right to things like, where do they keep them? There's gizmos, runtime, here we go. So there are post-processing volumes. Then there are post-processing layers, right? The one thing you'll want to do is, like if we go to demo resources, we can actually see that there is a sort of profile already made for us right underneath inside the HoloPlay item here. Now, we don't want to put this here. What we want to put in here is, well, this would actually go, probably just plop that right inside of there theoretically, but you still need an actual component for post-processing. So what we want is layer. I often I'll get these confused. So you want to have the layer on the outside. So get this out of here. We'll actually go like this, and we'll do, whoops, HoloPlay demo resources. That's fine. Go to HoloPlay, add a component. Post-processing volume. This is what we want to add to the camera. I always switch these up. Why do I do that in my head? I'm pretty sure that the layer goes in here. I don't know why I always do that. Put the layer in there, and then we put this here. So I am going to actually put this outside of environment. So I'll do create empty, post-process. Now, sometimes you'll have some prefabs in these. I don't think they have prefabs for, shouldn't, for it, but HoloPlay, post-process, go to demo resources, and we just drag that guy right into that. Oh, rather, oh no, this is the volume, excuse me. Volume in there, so post-process volume. Your script for that. There's the layer. Find your volume. That's the profile. That's the volume. Plop it in there. And we can make a new one, or you can go into demo resources. This is a profile, so you can actually just drag that right in. Is global. And we'll plop that onto there. Let's see what happens if we turn that off or on. Nothing quite yet. And that's because we haven't set a layer yet. And I pretty much want yeah. Say that's about, oh, well, but it's about right. Now let's see what happens here. See a subtle change, but nothing major. Part of the problem is we need a trigger. So do a cube. Oh, whoops. Collider. Box collider is trigger. We want to make sure that this is also at 0, 0, and 0. But it needs to be within the holoplay capture gizmo, so please be aware of that. It is important. Sometimes what will happen is your holoplay will actually be like, oh wait, where am I? Where's my gizmo? And then you can't find it. You can just kind of click on holoplay, make sure that this is dropped down, and it'll come back. This gizmo, this green outline. Right. Now, after that, we will make sure that the trigger's set. So what is the trigger? Maybe it's not the holoplay capture. Maybe it's actually post-process, because well, we made a volume out of it, so that's that. So now what happens when we start messing with things? Let's take a look here. So if we have a bloom value that's pretty much at normal now, we should probably try and change things, right? So what happens if we change things? Change it to red. What happens? What if we change it to, what if we change the color grading? Let me put a color filter onto everything. Doesn't look like things are changing quite yet. So I might have to switch things around. Maybe I don't have something checked. Let's see. Holoplay capture. Post-process. Press play. Sometimes you have to kind of get things going in play mode first. There we go. So the one thing you can do is, if you do nothing, that's not really going to help you out. If you do everything, you don't want to do that. Definitely best to have a post-processing layer. So as you can tell, we don't have that, right? So let's go ahead and make one. Layers. Sorting layers are fine. Layers, and we'll just call this process. Very nice. Okay, so now just process. And that layer should affect many things. It shouldn't be you know, it shouldn't be limited. That's what I'm saying. So back into overrides. Here. Good. Right. There. I will select post process. There we go. So now we have post process set up. We have the post process layer within the actual transform itself, which is post process. It's triggering, so if it wasn't triggering, it wouldn't be populating as red, right? And we have a post-process profile attached to a volume, which is the actual trigger that says, hey, like if the camera's here and it touches me, then make this happen, right? Make this red, make this bloom value this way. So let's mess around with these before we head out today. In particular, your depth of field is going to be the most important aspect here. I don't want you to ignore this because the holoplay intensity, depth of field, and the holoplay driven focus is very important for the sort of look that you want. It's important for this whole sfumato technique thing that I'm talking about, but it's also important for depth and clarity in general, not necessarily with these more painterly aspects involved, but it rather, just in general, it is very important relationship with the hardware, depth, clarity, etc. So mess around with this and see what happens. So if this is actually down to, let's see, bring it all the way down to like 0, it's gonna look a little weird. If we bring it up to 8.9, which is kind of where it was, it'll be fine. If we uncheck this, it's gonna look a little different too. Keep that. See how the depth is changing. You'll see some depth issues happening there. The parallax changes. And as well as with this. So this, you may not notice as much of a change here, but it is there. So medium size blur, large blur, very large blur, right? Things like that. I typically will keep it at least large, but yeah, sometimes you do need it to be smaller or very large. So it's just, not necessarily preference, but it's like correlated to whatever you're making or whatever you're trying to do. Play around with these. Obviously, having it around 8.9 is kind of like the ideal situation. It's the ideal look, so to speak. And I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that as far as what I'm looking at. Now, the other aspect of all this is ambient occlusion, which is also very important. Typically, when it comes to ambient occlusion and the looking glass display, a multi-scale volumetric obscurance, that's usually what you want to go for. If you have to do some kind of finicky work with optimization or something else, you can kind of mess around with whatever works best with what you're doing. You can adjust the intensity here, obviously. That's really gonna kind of darken those dark spots, right? And give extra shape, so to speak. If you turn it off, nothing happens because I pretty much set it to 0. So, obviously, the color itself has some kind of weight, adds some kind of character. Wouldn't mind keeping that kind of warm. This is my favorite one. Whenever I gotta go back to the 90s, I just throw some bloom on it. Go back to the 90s. Oh yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Or if you want to go to the 80s, you could like it's all you see on the screen, right? Your CRTV. But yeah, bloom value does add a certain amount of realism. You just have to make sure you use it wisely and not obnoxiously. Unless you're trying to go for some kind of 90s or early 2000s look, which is totally valid. I certainly did that several times in the holocomic where I kind of over bloomed it, the values. So, but yeah, this is all adjustable, really, right? So it's kind of nice. As for that, probably this is just color grading. It's kind of like, kind of giving me a little bit more warmth or a little bit cool. It just helps with the filtering. When it comes down to gamma for the looking glass display, it's usually very minor, but I will end up giving it either, I'll end up giving it kind of like instead of keeping it at 1, I like drop down to like 1.02, I think was my kind of like favorite number. 0.3 is fine. And it just kind of gives it a little bit more contrast and therefore a little bit more depth. But mess around with these, right? I mean, it's based on what you're doing. So lots to do here. Check it out. Go through the max blur size. Go through the holoplay intensity. Mess around with these values. Turn it on and off. Like what happens if I turn this off? Well, it doesn't really look like much happened, right? But there's much to do here. So depth of field. Yeah, it's not really doing anything. But it's very, very specific. And I think it's just not actually populating all over again. There. rather it's not reloading. Cool. That's that for today. I'd like to dig into the post-processing stuff a bit deeper next time or the time after that. I think it's a good little leeway introduction to what I'm going for, what I'm shooting for in regards to adding depth through post-processing. Ultimately, though, just have fun, and I will be giving you a sort of rubric assignment of sorts. Very simple. Just basically put in make a 3D scene with 2D elements. Create a quilt with it. Video quilt would be preferred. You can do this with the bridge. The bridge, or not the bridge, the alpha version. But you can also do it via. Let me just take a double check here. I think you can do it here as well. No, it's definitely with the 2.1 version that you would do it with, and that's perfectly fine. So you would go into the 2.1 version of the SDK or plugin, and you would make a video quilt. So basically, just similar to Capture. But it just works a little differently. And if you are signed up with the beta blocks, you can upload it directly, send me a link. I'll put instructions in so it's not too confusing. Rory, any questions? No? Alright. Well. This concludes today. And I hope you enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Alright. You're good? No questions?
Nope.
Alright, good. Hopefully I did alright there for you. Yeah, and then if you need anything else, just let me know, and we can see you next week.
See you next week.
Alright, bye-bye.
Bye.